The meeting in Alaska had been anticipated in advance and closely watched. The symbolism of the venue served the idea of détente, a neutral point between Washington and Moscow where the signal that political dialogue is again possible matters more than the decor. I think everyone understood perfectly well that no final agreement would be signed, although there had been a 50-day delay granted for secondary sanctions, and irked Trump then, in his trademark style, cut that period to 10 days. And then the meeting emerged. Expectations going into the summit reflected this mood, and understanding that it would not be the last and would likely be only a first step toward a broader format. Let's look at what was shown and what remained off camera. After all, there are two little voiced theories linked to this meeting which, while bordering on conspiracy, could quite plausibly be real. The baseline of hopes was pragmatic and quite tangible: to secure a ceasefire or at least to lock in a freeze along the line of contact. From the US side, signals had been sent in advance that decisions on territorial issues would publicly remain Kyiv's prerogative, and that key steps would be coordinated with European partners. At the same time, political circles entertained the idea of a quick deal without a detailed roadmap. For Washington, a chance to demonstrate leadership in a settlement; for Moscow, to fix current positions and shift the conversation into the realm of long-term European security. Skeptics, of course, prepared for a different outcome: protocol exchanges of positions, gestures for the cameras, and a couple of formulas in the closing statements without a text of binding commitments. I, by the way, held that view as well. The way the meeting was organized pointed precisely to a test of the political frame rather than substantive bargaining. The delegations were narrow, 3 on 3. On the Russian side, the president and two key foreign policy figures. On the US side, the president and two political negotiators. The public agenda mentioned Uitov and Marco Rubio. No economy or defense chiefs were brought into the room, which usually means it's not about immediate swaps of sanction packages or ironing out lines for troop disengagement. It's about a top-level framework that, if all goes well, will later be filled in by the ministries. The press was admitted only for a brief protocol portion, after which the room was quickly cleared. The greeting was pointed and warm, without excessive theatrics. A fighter jet flyover above the venue gave rise to many interpretations, but it did not affect the substance of the talks. The working part turned out significantly shorter than forecast. Instead of the expected 5 to 6 hours, roughly half that. The joint lunch was cancelled. The closing statements were delivered without a Q&A, and a typical detail was the order of speakers. The first word went not to the host but to the Russian leader, while the tone in the official portion remained respectful and restrained. In its rhetoric, Moscow emphasized a sustainable and long-term settlement, removing the root causes of the crisis, the need to take Russia's legitimate concerns into account, and restoring a balance of security in Europe and the world. There was also the formula about the closeness of the peoples and the undesirability of temporary half measures that only postpone inevitable decisions. From Washington, the assessment was cautious. The meeting was productive. Full mutual understanding is not there yet. There is no final deal, but the chance for a peaceful settlement is not bad. Secondary storylines swirled around the protocol, everything from lip reading to seating charts, but they did not change the essence of the talks. The reaction in the Western press was jittery. Some commentaries saw in the format and symbolism a sign that Moscow is swiftly returning to top-level engagement, bypassing the staircase of intermediate platforms. In the end, there were no dramatic turns, no immediate ceasefire was announced, and no legally binding document was presented, but the post-summit steps looked synchronized in time. The American side postponed decisions on additional measures against the energy sector for another 2 to 3 weeks, a symbolic pause that logically reads as a window for consultations. Reports appeared in the information space about a possible air truce before the next round at the time of discussion discussion without official confirmation. Almost immediately after the meeting, a round of contacts with European capitals began, and the president of Ukraine received an invitation for talks in Washington on the 18th of August, a separate track on which the architecture of the next step will depend. In one of the post-summit interviews, a concrete, if delicate, issue also surfaced: prisoners of war. The Russian side handed over a list of roughly 1,000 people and expects reciprocal decisions from Kiev. Difficult discussions about categories of detainees and exchange criteria are predictable here. In parallel, the prospect of an expanded format emerged. All three leaders could sit at the same table, which is logical given the key role of the Ukrainian factor. If we try to describe the political frame in the driest terms, it looks like this. The dialogue is open, the window of opportunity is delineated, but there is no body of a deal yet. The sides have room to translate the framework formula into mechanisms and a calendar, and they will need more than one separate round to do this with Kiev's participation and taking European capitals' positions into account. This is where the key methodological question emerges: a temporary truce as a pause for politics, or an immediate attempt to build a long-term security construct in which a ceasefire is only the first element of a larger scheme. In public, Moscow insisted on the latter. Washington left itself maneuvering room, stressing that there is a chance but no paper yet. But here is what I wanna say. What if the deal not only took place, but did so long ago? Think about it. Trump is a great lover of show, striking visuals, slogans, meetings, and applause. Putin is fairly dry and pragmatic. Broad, handsome gestures from him are possible only when the core work is already done. Although Trump is of course a very unconventional person and likes to break diplomatic traditions, this time the diplomatic meeting is part of a very good picture indeed. Never mind how it is perceived, the main thing is that people talk about it. If these two poles converged, then most likely the meeting in Alaska had in fact already taken place and was deemed successful by both sides. Otherwise, why have it at all? You can probe the ground remotely. The ground was probed long ago, possibly right after the US election. An important point that supports this version: Secretary of State Marco Rubio spoke with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov about preparations for the upcoming summit with President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Both sides confirmed their commitment to ensuring a successful event, said State Department Press Chief Tammy Bruce in a statement. It is unlikely they discussed protocol minutiae, the size of the desk flags, or the preferred soda brands for the delegations, though anything is possible, of course. It also matters how the next beat is being built. The line toward a separate visit by the president of Ukraine to Washington makes Kyiv the central variable in the future configuration. Will it be a one-off document on a ceasefire with a subsequent long security track, or an attempt to sign a comprehensive political package in which long obligations set the horizon and military measures are only the first step? Reports of a possible air truce fit the first scenario as a bridge between rounds, yet until officially verified, this remains only a working hypothesis. Europe's domestic politics add complexity. Without their participation and consent, any architecture risks stalling, which is precisely why an accelerated exchange of positions with key capitals began immediately after Alaska. And one more quite strange idea: the idea of retuning the clubs, which amid global turbulence is heard more and more often. At the level of political metaphor, a provocative question arises: could American leadership theoretically play on someone else's field? Could BRICS become BRICSU? Or, with Trump taking charge, UBRICS? In practical terms, this is extremely unlikely. BRICS was originally built as a coordination platform outside Western structures, and the United States remains the anchor of the existing financial military architecture. But posing the question helps to grasp the style and intent. It is not about formally joining another bloc, but about seizing the agenda so that competing formats take into account the American tempo and negotiation frame. In this reading, Ubergs is an image that explains the tactic, using someone else's institutional geometry as the backdrop for one's own initiatives, without formally changing membership and without dismantling one's own alliances. Taken together, we get a consistent story without excess emotion. The meeting that had been awaited took place in a narrow political format, faster than forecast and without a substantive paper, but with carefully placed milestones for the coming weeks, a limited pause on sanctions, intensive consultations with Europe, a separate visit by Kyiv to Washington, and the potential expansion of the format to 3 leaders. Write in the comments what you think about it.